The gavel slammed so hard it shook the courtroom. "You are guilty." Judge Hawthorne roared from the bench, his face red with fury. His voice echoing off every wall like a thunderclap. Standing before him, handcuffed, unmoving, was the black woman he had just accused of stealing evidence from the court archives. Her suit was neat, her posture perfect, but her eyes held something the judge didn't see until too late. Calm, control, and absolute certainty. Bailiffs tightened their grip on her arms. Reporters in the gallery leaned forward. Dozens of spectators froze, waiting for her to break, to cry, to crumble under the weight of a judge's rage. But instead, she lifted her chin, met his eyes, and said quietly, "Judge Hawthorne, you're under federal investigation." The courtroom fell silent, because in the next seconds, everything he built, every lie, every ruling will begin to collapse. Long before she stood in handcuffs before a raging judge, Marcia Holloway lived a life most people never noticed. She wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't loud. She was precise, disciplined, dangerously intelligent by day. She worked as a forensic judicial auditor, the kind of professional who combed through court records, case files, evidence chains, financial disclosures, the invisible architecture that keeps a justice system honest. And she was good. So good that her internal reports had quietly corrected 3 courthouses, to prosecutors' offices, and a handful of law firms that hoped no one would dig too deep. But 6 months ago, she found something she wasn't supposed to find, a pattern of missing evidence, always from Judge Hawthorne's courtroom. Files vanishing. Cases overturned without explanation. A private firm benefiting repeatedly. The deeper she looked, the louder the warning signs became. Then came the calls. Blocked numbers. Anonymous voices telling her to let it go. A coworker begging her to stop asking questions. A clerk warning her that Hawthorne protects his circle. But she didn't stop, because when Marcia saw corruption, she followed it slowly, silently, relentlessly. And that is exactly how she ended up in the one courtroom where she wasn't supposed to survive. Judge Hawthorne wasn't just corrupt, he was protected. Decades of influence. Political connections. And rulings worth millions kept him untouchable. If Marcia proved what she'd uncovered, that he'd tampered with evidence and steered verdicts for profit, his entire empire would fall, and Hawthorne knew it, which meant exposing him could cost Marcia her freedom or her life. And that's why he planned to silence her before she ever spoke. 3 weeks before the courtroom explosion, Marcia sat in the dimly lit records office. The hum of old fluorescent lights flickering above her. She wasn't a lone clerk. Daniel Ruiz, one of the few in the courthouse who treated her with respect, closed the door quietly behind him. His face was pale, his hands trembling, as he set a stack of files beside her. "Marcia, don't submit that report," he whispered. "You don't understand who you're dealing with." She kept reading. Another case with missing evidence? Another signature from Hawthorne's chambers. Another innocent defendant railroaded. Daniel leaned closer. He has people in every department, bailiffs, court reporters, even the DA's office. People who owe him favors. Or fear him. Please, stay away from this case. She finally looked up. "If I stay silent, I'm part of it." Daniel swallowed hard. "You don't get it. People who push too far around Judge Hawthorne don't last." Her heart tightened, not with fear, but with clarity. She wasn't hunting corruption. She was hunting a man who believed he could never be caught. And he was already watching her every move. Judge Hawthorne didn't summon Marcia to court through a formal notice. He ambushed her. She arrived expecting a brief clarification, hearing about a routine audit discrepancy. Instead, the courtroom was packed. Reporters seated. Bailiffs positioned. Spectators whispering like they already knew the verdict. Hawthorne stared down at her from the bench. Cold satisfaction hidden beneath rehearsed outrage. "Ms. Holloway," he boomed. "You are under suspicion for removing confidential evidence from the judicial archives." The words hit the room like thrown stones. Marcia blinked once. She knew this was retaliation and the beginning of something far darker, because Hawthorne didn't want clarification. He wanted her destroyed, and everything he did next proved it. To bailiffs marched toward her. No warrant, no explanation. Just the cold click of handcuffs tightening around her wrists. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as cameras flashed. Marcia didn't resist, didn't raise her voice, didn't look away from Hawthorne, because she already knew this was his first mistake. Judge Hawthorne leaned forward, his shadow stretching across the bench like a threat made of darkness. "Look at her," said to the courtroom, voice dripping with staged outrage. "A thief masquerading as an auditor. I will make an example out of you," he smiled. The smile of a man who believed he controlled every outcome. But he had no idea he'd just stepped into his own trap. The air inside Courtroom 6B felt thick, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every seat was filled. Every spectator leaned forward. Every reporter gripped their pen just a little tighter, because accusations were normal in courtrooms. But this? A judge accusing a judicial auditor of stealing evidence? This was spectacle. This was scandal. This was the kind of moment careers are built or destroyed on. Marcia Holloway stood in front of them all, wrists bound, chin lifted, posture unbroken. Not a victim, not a criminal, but a storm waiting for the right second to strike. Judge Hawthorne adjusted his glasses and tapped the gavel. Not to restore order, but for effect. Every sound he made was deliberate. Every gesture choreographed. He wanted this performance heard in every corner of the courthouse. He wanted fear to ripple outward, a reminder of the consequences for anyone who challenged him. "Miss Holloway," he announced, voice carrying the authority of decades, "you stand accused of removing sealed exhibits from case file 09-21, tampering with judicial property, and obstructing the administration of justice." He let the words hang. The gallery gasped. Someone whispered, "Is that even possible?" Another murmured, "Why would she do that?" Hawthorne's gaze swept the room, savoring the chaos. He loved spectacle. He lived for the moments where he could paint himself as the guardian of justice and the destroyer of threats. But something was different today. Subtle. Almost invisible. Marcia wasn't looking at him. She was watching the people behind him, bailiffs, exchanging uneasy glances, the clerk shifting nervously, an attorney in the front row tapping his pen too quickly, too anxiously. She was reading the temperature, and the temperature was changing. Hawthorne took her silence for fear. "Do you deny the charges?" he demanded. She didn't answer. Not yet. A prosecutor stepped forward, young, eager, and visibly uncomfortable. "Your Honor," he began, "the state requests immediate remand." Given the seriousness of the allegations, Hawthorne cut him off. "No remand needed. She will be held in the courthouse until this hearing concludes." The prosecutor blinked. "Sir, held. Without bail procedure, are you questioning my discretion?" Hawthorne snapped. The prosecutor backed down immediately because challenging Hawthorne meant career suicide. Marcia studied the prosecutor's face. He wasn't corrupt. He was scared. Scared of the man holding the gavel. Scared of the power imbalance in the room. And that fear was exactly what Hawthorne fed on. The judge leaned forward again. "You had access to the evidence vault. You were the last person logged before the items went missing. Do you deny it?" She still didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her bound hands slightly, the cuffs glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Your Honor," she said softly, "I will answer your questions, but not while restrained in violation of judicial protocol." A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. Hawthorne stiffened. He hadn't expected her to challenge him. Certainly not this calmly. Not this precisely. "What violation?" he scoffed. She tilted her head. "In this state, an auditor testifying under oath must not be restrained unless charged under criminal statute. I have been accused, not charged." The gallery murmured louder now. Reporters scribbled furiously. Hawthorne's jaw flexed. He knew she was right. But backing down would signal weakness, and weakness was blood in the water. He lifted the gavel. I make my own determinations in this courtroom. Marcia's eyes never left him. Exactly, she said quietly. And that is precisely why federal oversight is watching today. Silence, heavy, suffocating, paralyzing. Hawthorne blinked. Once, twice. What did you just say? But Marcia didn't repeat herself. She simply surveyed the room again and noticed more signs shifting beneath the surface. Hushed whispers among clerks. A bailiff subtly adjusting his radio. An unfamiliar man in the last row, tapping a badge clipped inside his coat. Hawthorne followed her gaze. He saw nothing. He never saw anything that wasn't about him. Continue the proceedings, he barked, trying to regain control. We will expose your lies one by one. But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. He was losing the room. Losing his grip. Losing control of the narrative, and Marcia hadn't even said a single defense yet. The atmosphere tightened. Thick with anticipation, the entire courtroom waiting for the next move. Hers or his. Truth or deception. Justice or corruption. And the moment she finally opened her mouth, the balance of power in that courtroom would shift forever. Marcia finally raised her eyes to the judge, not with fear, but with the kind of calm that makes guilty men flinch. Your Honor, she began softly. I'd like to answer your question. The courtroom leaned in. Bailiffs shifted, unsure. Reporters angled their cameras. Even the prosecutor straightened. Sensing a shift, Marcia lifted her cuffed wrist slightly. You claim I removed Exhibit C from the evidence vault? He smirked. I don't claim it. It's fact. She nodded once. Then perhaps you should check the chain of custody log you're waving around. A murmur spread across the gallery. Hawthorne frowned. What about it? Marcia tilted her head. You said I was the last one logged. That's incorrect. The clerk flustered flipped through the printed log. His eyes widened. He swallowed hard. Your Honor? The last entry. It wasn't Miss Holloway. The entire courtroom froze. Hawthorne's face twitched. Read it, Marcia said calmly. The clerk's voice cracked. The last person who entered the vault. Was your assistant, sir? Gasped, someone whispered. Oh my God. Marcia continued, voice steady as steel. And for the record, I never handled Exhibit C, not once. Not ever. Prosecutor's eyes widened. He looked at the log again and realized she was right, but Hawthorne slammed the gavel. Fabrication. Those logs can be altered. Marcia's expression didn't change. If they were altered, Your Honor, then the alteration came from your chambers. Silence. Like the whole room forgot how to breathe. Because she had just thrown the first stone, and the cracks in his armor were beginning to show, Judge Hawthorne's face flushed a violent shade of red, a color no courtroom had ever seen on him before. Silence. He barked, slamming the gavel so hard the sound cracked through the room like a shot fired indoors. The gallery jumped. Reporters nearly dropped their pens. Even the bailiffs hesitated. He wasn't angry. He was rattled, deeply. And Marcia knew it. You dare accuse my chambers of wrongdoing? He snarled. Marcia didn't blink. I'm not accusing, Your Honor. I'm stating facts already documented. That single word documented made Hawthorne's jaw clench so hard the muscles twitched. He pointed at her. A move judges rarely make because it screams desperation. You manipulated those files. You accessed restricted databases. You've orchestrated this entire spectacle to undermine the court. Spectacle. The only spectacle in the room was him. Marcia remained still, almost serene, a stark contrast to the storm raging behind the bench. Your Honor, she said, if you believe I accessed restricted systems, produce the metadata. Every action in that vault is time-stamped. A ripple of shock moved through the courtroom. Everyone knew what metadata meant. Proof. Truth. Evidence that could not lie. Hawthorne's eyes flickered. Just for a second toward the clerk's desk. The clerk stiffened, as if silently begging him not to drag them into this. But he had already gone too far. I don't need metadata to convict you, Hawthorne shouted. My word is enough in this courtroom. Gasps exploded around the room. Reporters exchanged looks. Bailiffs shifted uncomfortably. Even the prosecutors stared at the judge like he'd lost control of his own mouth. Because every attorney, clerk, and law student knew the truth. A judge who says his word alone determines guilt has forgotten everything the justice system stands for. Marcia tilted her head, studying him as if examining a patient. "Your Honor," she said softly, "your word is not the law. The law is the law." That sentence sliced the air cleanly, and everyone felt it. Hawthorne slammed the gavel again. "You're in contempt. You will answer only what I ask. You have no right to challenge." But he choked on his own sentence when Marcia stepped forward ever so slightly. "You demanded I answer your question," she said. "And I did. It's not my fault the truth doesn't match your script." A roar of whispers erupted. Several spectators gasped loudly. One reporter whispered, "She's done her homework." The prosecutor cleared his throat, voice shaky. "Your Honor, perhaps we should review the files before proceeding." "No," Hawthorne snapped. So violently the young man flinched. The courtroom had never seen him like this, sweating, trembling, losing the grip he spent decades maintaining. And the more he shouted, the more controlled Marcia became. "You're overstepping," she said quietly. Hawthorne pointed at her again, a vein pulsing in his forehead. "The only one overstepping here is you." But he was wrong, and everyone in the room was beginning to see it. Because for the first time in his entire career, Judge Hawthorne wasn't presiding over a hearing. It was spiraling into one. The courtroom didn't breathe. Everyone watched Marcia. The woman Hawthorne had expected to break as she slowly placed a small folder on the witness stand. Not trembling, not rushing, just deliberate, Your Honor, she said calmly. "I'd like to submit 3 documents into the record." Hawthorne scoffed. "You don't submit anything." "This hearing is but the prosecutor cut in, voice tight and professional, Your Honor. She is the accused. She has the right to present counter-evidence." Hawthorne froze. That wasn't how this day was supposed to go. Marcia opened the folder. 3 pages. Neat, precise. "Document 1, she said, lifting the first sheet. "Is the building access audit for the evidence vault on the day the exhibit vanished?" The clerk swallowed hard. Hawthorne narrowed his eyes. Marcia continued. "It shows that I left the courthouse at 4:12 p.m., and the vault was accessed again at 5:08 p.m. Long after my departure." Collective gasp rippled across the gallery. Marcia lifted the second sheet. "Document 2 is the hallway camera." Still, she placed it where the projector could capture. It, on the screen, appeared a grainy image. A figure entering the evidence wing at exactly 5:08 p.m. A figure in judicial robes. Not hers. Not even close. Hawthorne's lips tightened. Marcia spoke without raising her voice. "This image was provided by internal security." "Not me," a reporter whispered. "That's definitely someone from Chambers." Another whispered, "That silhouette. That walk. That height. That's him." Hawthorne slammed the gavel. "Speculation. Illegal acquisition. This is a violation of procedure." But Marcia wasn't done. She raised the third sheet. "Document 3, Your Honor, is the most critical." She unfolded it slowly. A spark of terror flickered in Hawthorne's eyes. "This," she said, "is the chain of custody correction request filed from your office for hours after the evidence went missing." Gasps, shouts, whispers, chaos. The prosecutor's jaw dropped. The clerk covered his mouth. A bailiff muttered, "No way." Marcia looked directly at Hawthorne. "You accused me of stealing something your own Chambers tried to rewrite?" Silence swallowed the room whole. Hawthorne's hands trembled on the bench. For the first time, the entire courtroom understood. This wasn't just a hearing. It was the opening act of a scandal big enough to drown a judge. And she still hadn't revealed the most dangerous proof she brought with her. "Judge." Hawthorne shot to his feet so fast his chair slammed into the wall behind him. "That document is forged." He shouted, voice cracking under pressure. "None of this is admissible. None of this is real. She is manipulating this court. but the desperation in his tone betrayed him more than any file ever could. The prosecutor stepped back, uneasy. Reporters scribbled faster. A few jurors exchanged wide-eyed glances. Marcia didn't raise her voice. Didn't argue. Didn't flinch. She simply placed the folder down and folded her hands. If the documents are fake, she said softly, then you should have no problem allowing a federal verification. Hawthorne froze. For one split second. The entire courtroom saw it fear, because verification was the last thing he wanted. For a long, suffocating moment, the courtroom remained frozen. Marcia standing calm and still. Judge Hawthorne gripping the bench like a man clinging to the edge of a cliff. Then something unexpected happened. A voice broke the silence. Your Honor? She's right. Heads turned toward the speaker, Court Clerk Daniel Ruiz. The same clerk who'd warned Marcia weeks earlier. His hands were shaking, but he stood anyway. I reviewed the chain of custody correction request, he said, voice trembling but steadying with each word. And it did come from your chambers. I didn't say anything at the time because I was told not to. Hawthorne's head snapped. Toward him so sharply, the gallery flinched. Sit down, Mr. Ruiz, he growled. You will not interfere. But the clerk didn't sit. He lifted his chin, a small act of courage in a room built on fear. Sir, I won't lie anymore. Whispers exploded across the courtroom. A second voice rose. Officer Janelle Brooks, one of the bailiffs positioned near the front. Your Honor, she said, security logs confirm your assistant entered the vault that day. We have the entry card data. Hawthorne's face drained of color. You're out of line, he snapped. You have no authority to, but she wasn't listening. She turned toward Marcia. I should have reported it sooner, she admitted. I'm sorry. Then, as if a silent signal passed through the room, another figure stood, the man Marcia had noticed earlier, the quiet one in the last row. Dark suit, neutral expression. Badge clipped inside his coat, barely visible, he stepped into the aisle. In the entire courtroom, straightened instinctively, he spoke with the calm authority of someone accustomed to changing the outcome of a room. My name is Special Agent Henry Cole, he said, removing his badge for all to see. Department of Justice. Office of the Inspector General. Porters gasped. Cameras clicked. Even the air seemed to recoil. Hawthorne staggered back a step. What? What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Agent Cole approached the bench slowly, deliberately, each step eroding what remained of Hawthorne's control. For several months, he said, the DOJ has been monitoring irregularities related to evidence handling and case outcomes in this courtroom. Now the gallery erupted, the sound of shock, vindication, and disbelief merging into a single roar. Marcia remained silent. Watching Hawthorne unravel, Agent Cole continued, Ms. Holloway provided preliminary findings that matched our own internal red flags. We initiated a quiet review. Today was intended to be an observation. He looked at Hawthorne, his gaze cold and surgical. But your conduct escalated it into action. Hawthorne's voice shook. This is outrageous. This entire hearing is compromised. I demand this man leave. You're in no position to demand anything, Agent Cole replied, voice like steel wrapped in velvet. As of this moment, your courtroom is under federal supervision. Collective gasp filled the air. Hawthorne opened his mouth, but no words came out, because it was finally, painfully clear. The judge was no longer the most powerful man in the room, and the next revelation would be the one that shattered his entire legacy. Judge. Hawthorne's breath trembled as Agent Cole's presence settled over the courtroom, like a storm cloud ready to burst. But Marcia wasn't done. Not even close. She stepped forward, hands still cuffed, voice steady enough to silence the room. Your Honor, she said, your accusation was never about missing evidence. It was about stopping me before I exposed what you've been hiding for years. Hawthorne flinched. Just slightly, but it was enough. Marcia lifted a second folder, thicker, heavier, the kind of folder that doesn't destroy reputations. It detonates them. Let's talk about patterns, she continued, She opened the folder. Case 14-78. Critical exhibit disappears. Your ruling shifts dramatically hours later. The gallery gasped. Case 22-2019. Video evidence mislabeled. The defendant, whose attorney you met privately, walks free, reporters scribbled furiously. Case 17-442. Chain of custody error, in the exact same department your assistant controls. Hawthorne gripped the bench to steady himself, but Marcia kept going. 6 cases, all with missing or altered evidence. 5 rulings benefiting the same private firm. 3 whistleblowers who resigned mysteriously. 1 clerk, she glanced toward Daniel, who was threatened into silence. The clerk's eyes filled. He nodded. Whispers exploded through the courtroom. This is corruption, he's finished. I knew something was wrong. Marcia dropped the final sheet on the projector. A chart, dates, times, case numbers. Vault entries. Assistant access logs. Judge Hawthorne's signatures. Every thread connected to one man, Hawthorne. He stumbled back into his chair. The color drained from his face. For the first time in his entire career, he looked small. Agent Cole stepped closer. These findings match our internal investigation, he said. We were waiting for corroboration. He looked at Marcia. And you just provided it. Silence collapsed over the courtroom. Marcia's voice softened. Not cruel, not vengeful, just true. You didn't accuse me to protect justice. You accused me to protect yourself. The next thing she revealed would make the entire courtroom erupt. Judge Hawthorne pressed both palms to the bench, failing to breathe steadily. But Marcia wasn't finished. This was the moment she'd been building toward since the second. She was dragged into that courtroom in cuffs. She walked toward the clerk's desk. Her movements controlled and deliberate, her cuffs clinking softly with each step. There's one more thing, she said, and this is the part you hoped no one would ever find. Hawthorne stiffened. Agent Cole raised an eyebrow. Reporters leaned forward like wolves scenting blood. Marcia glanced at the evidence screen. 3 weeks ago, Judge Hawthorne ordered an emergency transfer of all high-value evidence to Vault Room C, she said. A room that has been officially out of service for 9 months due to structural repairs? Murmurs. Hawthorne swallowed hard. But that transfer, Marcia continued, was logged under my ID. She held up her hands. This is important because 9 days before that supposed transfer, my ID card was disabled. I reported it lost. Security deactivated it. Gasps. And yet, she said, tapping the folder it was used. Inside a room no one was allowed to access. For a case you were personally presiding over? Hawthorne opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Marcia stepped even closer. Close enough that he couldn't escape the truth. You didn't just alter evidence, Judge. You stole my badge ID to create a fall guy. You used a broken room and a disabled card to manufacture a perfect crime? The prosecutor froze. Papers half lifted in her hands. Daniel, the clerk, covered his mouth. Agent Cole's face hardened. That aligns with our findings, he said slowly. We traced an unusual badge override to a judge-level authorization. He turned to Hawthorne. Your authorization. The courtroom erupted, shouts, gasps, reporters firing off messages, spectators standing to get a better view of the man unraveling behind the bench. Hawthorne shook his head violently, but every syllable betrayed panic. That's impossible. She's lying. It's all fabricated. Marcia raised a single eyebrow. Then why, she said quietly. Did the repair crew's report show your fingerprint on the vault keypad? The keypad you claimed had been broken for 9 months. A dead, suffocating silence dropped over the courtroom. Everything, every lie, every threat, every accusation had circled back, tightening like a noose. But the real collapse wouldn't happen until she revealed the one piece of evidence that even federal agents hadn't seen yet. A tremor moved through Judge Hawthorne's hands. The kind a man gets when the truth is no longer a rumor, but a sentence forming around his neck. Marcia inhaled slowly, letting the silence work for her. In a courtroom, silence was sharper than any accusation, and right now, the room was carved into stillness. There is, she said softly, one more piece of evidence. Agent Cole turned toward her. You mentioned material we haven't reviewed yet. Marcia nodded. I didn't hand it over earlier because I wanted to present it under oath, in a room where he couldn't bury it again. Hawthorne's face twitched. Marcia stepped toward the center of the courtroom. Her cuffs clinked, a deliberate reminder of the humiliation he tried to brand her with. 3 months ago, she said, Judge Hawthorne dismissed a whistleblower case involving missing narcotics from the evidence room. He called it procedural nonsense, but the whistleblower wasn't wrong. She reached into the evidence folder and pulled out a small, black device, a portable, time-stamped evidence scanner. Gasps rippled across the gallery. Hawthorne froze. This scanner, she said, was assigned to me. Except I never used it. I didn't even know it had gone missing. She held it up so the camera could zoom. 2 weeks ago, maintenance worker found it wedged behind a filing cabinet in Vault Room C. He turned it in. Security logged it, and I requested a forensic readout. Agent Cole stepped forward. Let me see the logs, Marcia smiled. You'll want the last entry? He tapped through the digital log, stopped, went pale. Everyone in the courtroom leaned forward as he read aloud. User, Judge Hawthorne. Time, 2:14 a.m. Action, evidence removal. Case State v. Carson. Item removed, 14 vials of fentanyl. The courtroom erupted. Shouts, gasps, reporters standing on their toes. The prosecutor dropping her pen. Hawthorne staggered back a step. That's falsified, he shouted, voice cracking. She fabricated shishi, but Agent Cole held up a hand. No. This device has encrypted biometric confirmation. You can't fake a fingerprint seal. He looked directly at Hawthorne. Your fingerprint is on the last action. Your judge-level override. Your midnight access to a supposedly sealed vault. Hawthorne's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked smaller, like a man shrinking underneath his own robe. Marcia stepped closer. You tried to make me your scapegoat, she said. You used my disabled ID card? You planted staged evidence. You altered logs. You leaked a story to the press labeling me a suspect under review. Hawthorne shut his eyes, as if closing them would erase the room. You bet on one thing, she whispered, that no one would question a powerful white judge over a black woman with a badge. Her voice hardened. But you forgot the first rule of federal auditing. We don't care about your robe. We care about your records. Agent Cole turned to the bailiffs. Take him into custody. The room exploded again. Spectators standing, phones flashing, reporters shouting questions. The prosecutor, looking like her world had been yanked off its axis. The bailiffs moved toward the bench. Hawthorne backed away. You can't arrest me in my own courtroom. I am the law here. No, Marcia said softly. You were. He froze. Her final words cut through him cleaner than any verdict. And now, Judge Hawthorne, you're under investigation. Sir, but justice wasn't finished with him yet, not even close. The moment Judge Hawthorne heard take him into custody, the last illusion of control shattered. He stumbled backward. His robe snagging on the corner of the bench like the building itself was refusing to let him escape. For the first time all morning, his arrogance wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing. The bailiffs approached cautiously, as if nearing a wild animal cornered and unpredictable. I order you to stop, Hawthorne screamed, voice shrill. Nothing like the man who had barked commands from the bench moments earlier. You will not touch me. I am the law in this courtroom. Agent Cole stepped forward, calm, unmovable, like a mountain in a storm. No, Judge Hawthorne, he said. Today, the law finally touches you. Stunned silence washed over the gallery. Then everything erupted. People rose from benches. Reporters fired off questions. Phones lifted into the air. Clerks whispered to each other in panic. Even the prosecutor, normally composed, looked like the floor had been ripped from beneath her and through it all. Marcia stood perfectly still. No smile, no gloating. Just the quiet, steady posture of a woman who knew this moment didn't belong to revenge, belonged to recording the truth. The bailiffs finally moved in. Hawthorne slapped one's hand away. Don't you dare. I could end your careers with a single order. The lead bailiff, a man who had worked in that courthouse for 22 years, took a step back, but not out of fear, out of disgust. I've carried out your orders for years, he said, voice thick with something between sorrow and relief. But this time I carry out something that actually looks like justice. The gallery gasped. Agent Cole looked to the second bailiff. Cuff him. They moved. Hawthorne screamed. No. No, this is a witch hunt. She set me up. She's a thief. A liar. Marcia turned her head slightly. The mere look silenced him. She didn't do this, Agent Cole said. You did. The cuffs clicked shut, that sound. That small metallic clink seemed to echo off every wall. The symbol of power he had misused for years finally locking his own wrists. The same. Humiliation he orchestrated for her just hours earlier now circled, back like fate moving in perfect symmetry. The prosecutor, who had stood beside him moments before now, couldn't bring herself to make eye contact. The clerk Daniel wiped his eyes, and the reporters. Oh, the reporters, they were already crafting headlines. Judge arrested in his own courtroom. Ederol, auditor exposes courthouse corruption. Hawthorne. Evidence scandal shakes state judiciary. The avalanche wasn't done. Agent Cole cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. For the record, he announced, the FBI is opening a full-scale criminal investigation into Judge Hawthorne's rulings. Evidence handling, case assignments, witness manipulation, and previous disciplinary complaints. He turned to the prosecutor. We will need every case file he touched for the past 7 years. Her jaw dropped. All of them. She whispered. Cole nodded. Double quotes. Every single one. Hawthorne sagged. It was no longer just this moment. No longer just this scandal. No longer just this arrest. His entire career, every judgment, every sentence, every decision was now radioactive. Marcia finally stepped forward. Her cuffs were still on. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Agent Cole noticed and gently unlocked them. The courtroom watched as the shackles fell from Marcia's wrists and clattered onto the floor right beside the judge who once believed she wasn't worth a glance. Marcia rubbed her wrists, then lifted her chin. My report, she said, will include every irregularity I found before this morning. She looked at Hawthorne, not with hate, but with the calm certainty of someone who understood that justice didn't need anger to be absolute. And trust me, she said softly, this morning was only the beginning. The prosecutor swallowed. What? What happens now? She asked Cole. He answered without hesitation. Now, we secure the courtroom, begin evidence seizure, and notify the State Judicial Oversight Committee. And after that, Cole looked at Marcia. After that, the system starts cleaning itself. But Hawthorne's collapse was just one domino, and the next ones were already trembling. News spreads fast in a courthouse, but corruption exposed on live stream, that spreads like wildfire. Within minutes of Judge Hawthorne's arrest, the building's atmosphere shifted from chaos to something electric, something historic. A line of reporters formed outside the courtroom doors, microphones raised like weapons, their voices overlapping. Is the federal auditor safe? Was the judge really running an evidence scheme? Who knew about this inside the courthouse? Camera flashes lit up the hallway like lightning striking again and again, and then the national outlets. Joined.CNN, BBC, The Washington Post, even. Investigative journalists from ProPublica began calling the courthouse clerk's office, requesting immediate statements and documents. Screens across. America lit up with the breaking headline. Federal judge arrested in his own court, evidence scandal. EXPLODS clips from the live stream replayed on every network. Hawthorne screaming as cuffs closed around his wrists, Marcia calmly presenting evidence. Agent Cole's voice cutting through the chaos. The law finally touches you. By evening, millions had watched it, but the shockwaves didn't stop at the public. They hit the system hard. State senators posted demands for judicial audits. The governor announced an emergency task force to review courthouse corruption allegations. The Attorney General requested all rulings tied to missing evidence be immediately flagged for review, and deep inside the state capitol, a quiet but urgent conversation took place. Do we suspend him? No. We strip everything. Title, pension, certifications, and the cases. All overturned. Every single questionable one. Meanwhile, inside the courthouse, panic grew like rising water. Assistants shredded papers. A deputy prosecutor made a frantic call, begging her supervisor for guidance. Two clerks cried, terrified their names might appear in Hawthorne's emails. Because the investigation had just widened and they all knew that corruption rarely exists alone. It spreads. It infects. It implicates. For Marcia, the reaction felt surreal. She walked through crowds of reporters as Agent Cole shielded her. Her phone buzzed. Non-stop messages from colleagues across the country. Judges she had audited before, even citizens who had been victimized by Hawthorne's courtroom. One message stood out. You saved us all today, outside. Protesters gathered within hours, some holding signs demanding accountability. Others cheering Marcia's courage. One sign read, "She is what justice looks like." But the most unexpected call came directly from Washington, D.C. Agent Cole handed Marcia the phone. She answered, "Marcia, this is Director Lawson." Her eyes widened. The director of the entire federal judiciary. Oversight Division was calling her personally. We've reviewed the footage. We're opening a nationwide review of evidence handling procedures in every state courthouse. Your actions today may change how the justice system operates in this entire country. Marcia's breath caught. Not pride. Not disbelief. Just the quiet realization that she had stepped into a battle much larger than one corrupt judge, and it was only beginning. Because the final revelation, the one Marcia had saved, would shake the system even more than Hawthorne's arrest. The morning after Judge Hawthorne's arrest, America woke up to a justice system on fire. Every major news network replayed the footage, Marcia's calm dismantling of the judge. The moment Agent Cole placed him under arrest, the courtroom erupting in chaos. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a reckoning, and the shockwaves grew one. The judiciary crumbles, one name at a time, by sunrise. The State Judicial Oversight Committee had convened an emergency session, their first action. Suspend Hawthorne indefinitely, without pay, without privilege, without the protections he once hid behind. Their second action. Launch investigations into every person connected to his courtroom. His assistant placed on immediate leave. The courthouse evidence supervisor escorted out by security. 2. Prosecutors flagged for ethics violations. A senior bailiff removed pending inquiry. 3 clerks subpoenaed before noon. Every file Hawthorne touched was pulled from the shelves and placed into red-taped boxes marked.
Corruption review, high priority. Rows and rows of boxes lined the courthouse hallway like tombstones of destroyed careers. 2. Hundreds of past cases called into question prisoners across the state began filing motions. Defense attorneys, some trembling with fury, called their clients. We're reopening your case. You might be free soon. A man who had been incarcerated for 8 years for a charge tied to Hawthorne's court collapsed in tears during a prison visitation call when his lawyer said, "He tampered with evidence. You might go home." His mother fainted. His sister screamed. The entire visitation room erupted. Another woman wrongfully convicted after missing video evidence was transferred to a review facility within hours. She hadn't seen sunlight without barbed wire in 4 years. Now she cried into her hands and whispered, "Thank God for that woman, the one who exposed him." 3. Politicians scrambled to control the damage. The governor held a press conference under the weight of furious reporters. "Governor, how many cases were compromised? Did your office know about Hawthorne's actions? What safeguards failed? Is the entire judiciary corrupted?" He could barely answer. He promised reforms, audits, task forces, the political equivalent of throwing sandbags against a tsunami. Meanwhile, state senators fired off statements online. "This is an embarrassment. This cannot happen again. We demand Hawthorne's prosecution to the fullest extent." One senator, normally calm, wrote, If not for that federal auditor, this would have remained hidden. We owe her. 4. Nationwide legal organizations respond. The American Bar Association announced an emergency review into all previously dismissed ethics complaints in the region. Civil rights groups mobilized instantly. ACLU filed 2 emergency petitions. NAACP Legal Defense Fund launched investigations. Innocence Project volunteers worked through the night, analyzing old rulings for misconduct patterns. They released a statement. This is one of the most significant judicial integrity breaches in recent U.S. history. 5. Local lives turn upside down. People from Hawthorne's past came forward. A tearful mother on live TV. He destroyed my son's life. A former defendant. He ignored evidence that proved I was innocent. A clerk who once feared retaliation whispered, "We all knew something was wrong, but no one had proof until her." Even courthouse staff, those who once walked past Marcia without a second glance, now looked at her with reverence. They whispered her name with gratitude, not fear, not pity, respect. 6. Hawthorne's personal world implodes. His mansion was surrounded by reporters. Neighbors watched from behind fences. His wife left the house with suitcases. His teenage son refused to speak to him. His country club revoked his membership. His law school deleted him from the alumni highlight page. The collapse was total and poetic. 7. The FBI expands the investigation. Agent Cole led a team into Hawthorne's office, seizing hard drives, personal laptops, confidential case, files, 2 locked drawers, an encrypted external device, a burner phone hidden in a drawer, a personal ledger with suspicious payments. The burner phone alone set off alarms inside the bureau. And the ledger, it contained initials, dates, amounts, and case numbers, a map of corruption, a roadmap of guilt, and a death sentence for his entire career and freedom. 8. Social media turns Marcia into a national symbol on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. Her name exploded. Number justice for Marcia, number auditor hero, number courtroom truth, number she exposed him, number Hawthorne corruption. Clips of her saying, "You didn't accuse me to protect justice. You accused me to protect yourself," went viral. A law student tweeted, "I'm studying judicial ethics because of her." A mother wrote, "I showed my daughters her video. I want them to be that brave." A veteran commented, "She fought corruption without a weapon. That's real courage." 9. Quiet moments nobody saw. Late that night, Marcia sat alone in her hotel room, her badge on the table, her tablet full of case files, her phone overflowing with messages. But the weight of the day, the chaos, the confrontation, the fallout, settled on her shoulders like a heavy winter coat. She wasn't celebrating. She wasn't gloating. She was preparing because she knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something bigger, darker, more dangerous. Because tomorrow morning, she would reveal the secret Hawthorne hid the deepest, a truth that would shake the entire judiciary to its foundation. The world didn't forget. Not the courtroom chaos, not the live stream, not the cuffs closing around Judge Hawthorne's wrists, not Marcia's calm voice cutting through corruption like a blade through silk, and certainly not the investigation that followed. Because the scandal didn't end with Hawthorne. It began with him. 1 year later, the courthouse where everything happened looks different now. Cleaner, quieter, more disciplined, more transparent. New security cameras line the evidence vault. Chain of custody logs are now digital, triple verified, federally audited. Whispers of corruption? Gone. Fear of being watched? Present everywhere. They should have feared that a long time ago. Marcia walks through the new entrance gate, the morning sun casting a long shadow behind her. Not as an accused suspect, not as a target of judicial arrogance, not as a victim, but as something far more powerful. Director Marcia Reynolds, head of the Federal Integrity and Judicial Review Bureau. A title created because of her. A department formed because of her. A new culture built because of her. She steps into the renovated evidence center, greeted by a young clerk. "Director Reynolds, we finished the final audit." "Good," she replies softly. "Let's close what we started." Hawthorne's fate. 2 weeks ago, Judge Hawthorne was sentenced in federal court. The charges: evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, civil rights violations, bribery, judicial fraud, abuse of power, suppression of exculpatory evidence, retaliation, perjury, and conspiracy. The list was so long the sentencing hearing took 8 hours. At the end of it, the judge, a different one, looked down from the bench and said, "You destroyed trust in one of the most sacred institutions in this nation. You will pay for every life you affected." Hawthorne received 28 years. No plea deal, no reduced sentence, no special privileges. He now wakes up in a federal prison with no robe, no power, no followers, and no one left to blame. His name appears in textbooks now, not as a respected jurist, but as a cautionary tale of arrogance meeting accountability. The system transformed. More than 300 of Hawthorne's past rulings were reopened. 42 people had their convictions overturned. 27 were compensated by the state. 11 were released on time served. 4 were proven completely innocent after years of wrongful imprisonment. One of them, a quiet man named Isaiah Porter, now works as a technician in the very evidence vault that once betrayed him. He always greets Marcia with a nod that carries more gratitude than words ever could. Across the country, other states adopted Marcia's audit protocol. Federal billboards hang outside courthouses. Integrity is not optional. Every piece of evidence tells a story. Auditors protect the truth. And beneath them, in small print, protocol developed by director Marcia Reynolds. The secret SHE saved 4 last inside a sealed archive room, secured with biometric locks. Marcia reviews one final folder, the last piece of Hawthorne's legacy that still needs to be addressed. Inside it is a document that never went public, a report he filed 3 years before his arrest. It exposed something much bigger than his own corruption, something he hid because he was part of it, something he never thought would see daylight. A list of judges, 9 of them across 3 states, whose rulings showed identical patterns of evidence interference. Hawthorne wasn't the only one. He was just the first to fall. Marcia closes the folder. Agent Cole steps beside her. "You ready to start phase 2? She exhales slowly. "Let's finish what we began." Later that afternoon, Marcia attends a ceremony in the same courthouse lobby where she was once handcuffed. The governor stands at the podium. He speaks loudly, clearly, the words echoing off marble walls. "A year ago, a single woman exposed corruption we didn't want to believe existed. She faced humiliation. She faced retaliation. She faced an entire courtroom that turned against her." He turns toward her. "But she didn't bend, she didn't break, she didn't run." The crowd of judges, clerks, citizens, and officers applauds, not the polite applause of formality, but the thunderous applause of gratitude. The governor lifts the medal. "For unwavering service to justice, for bravery in the face of corruption, for restoring faith in the law, we award Director Marcia Reynolds the State Medal of Judicial Honor." As the medal touches her chest, Marcia feels a warmth that replaces every bruise her spirit endured. Her mind drifts to that courtroom, to the accusations, the stares, the humiliation, and the moment she stood tall when the world tried to shrink her. She earned this moment, every part of it. After the ceremony, reporters surround her. "Director Reynolds, how does it feel to have changed the system?" She smiles gently. "No one changes the system alone." Another reporter raises a microphone. "What would you like to say to people who watched the live stream last year?" She pauses, a soft breath, a calm voice. The same voice that once disarmed a tyrant. "I want them to know that justice is not a building or a title or a robe. It's the courage to speak when silence is safer. It's the determination to verify what others choose to ignore. And it's the belief that one voice, even one, can expose the truth hidden by hundreds." The crowd goes quiet. Her final words land gently but powerfully. "If you witness injustice," she says, "don't look away, don't wait for someone else. Stand up, speak up. You never know how many people your courage will save." As Marcia walks out of the courthouse, the sun dips low behind her, a golden silhouette framing the woman who brought a corrupt empire to its knees. Children watch her pass with eyes full of admiration. Officers nod respectfully. Clerks straighten their posture. Citizens whisper her name as if speaking of a legend. And somewhere in the country, 9 judges on the secret list feel a cold shiver because the woman who ended Hawthorne is coming for them next. If Marcia's journey moved you, if her courage inspired you, if her fight reminded you that justice is alive as long as people defend it, don't forget to like this video, share the story, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this one reach more people who need hope, who need courage, and who need to know that justice can still win. And if you caught the tiny detail in the courtroom scene at minute 432, the detail almost everyone missed, drop it in the comments. It reveals more about Hawthorne's character than any document ever could.